We all know Cal Dietz stepping up here. He's at the University of Minnesota, head Olympic strength and conditioning coach. Started there in 2000. Last check, he's still there, so that's about 17 years. He's had his hands on just about every athlete at that place at some point or another. Many championships, many accolades. Some of y'all may know him better with a couple of things that he's done pretty well, and one of those was partner up and write a book that we all know very well called TriPhasic method or training. He's also currently working with a group called RPR, Reflexive Performance Reset. Pick his brain on that. Pretty awesome stuff. XLathlete.com. Y'all might want to check that out. I've known Cal quite a while. One thing I can say about him is he's a sharer, all right? There's no original ideas, but he's found really unique ways to make them work better. And some may work for you and some may not. But he's open to hear your criticism. He's open to hear how you made what he started in a different way better, right? On our racks, you see those arms going up, those triphasic arms. That's part of his training style. Guy could go anywhere in the world, work with anybody, but he chose to work with us in helping with that design. He's won it all over the country, speaks, talks to people, but he keeps coming back here and talks with us and hangs with us, and he's just, down-to-earth good people, just like all of you are. So, without further ado, put your hands together, Cal Dietz.
Thanks, Trey. Thanks, Trey. I appreciate it. A little over the top. I want to thank the Sorinex family for having me here and putting such a great event together. It took me a while to find it, but I finally found it. But as Trey said, I'm at the University of Minnesota. There's my email. Seems like everybody in the free world finds it, so feel free to email me. We'll get going here. So basically today, for me, most of the time, winning is more important than breathing, to be honest with you. That's why I got into this sport. I was very fortunate to win a lot of championships, and what we're going to talk about today is just things that I've never stopped learning. I think I got a library of 150,000 articles and books. Okay? My poor interns, if there's any here, which I probably have some, they've scanned books for decades. Okay? And then we read them and summarize them. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you all the information I got. This is stuff I haven't released before. But up there right now, it's results of this I call it bioenergetics integration. Now, if you're a power lifter, you're thinking fitness levels, how important is it to me? But your fitness levels is important for recovery, okay? So if I can get an athlete that starts week 0 at 70 beats per minute, we don't do any conditioning, we don't do anything other than the training, and 8 weeks later he's at 32 resting heart rate and he's not a bicyclist on drugs on EPO, then I know I have an organism that can handle lots and lots of stress, okay? So yes, I have 260-pound throwers who have resting heart rate of 50 when they get up in the morning, which is a little bit odd, okay? That just tells me his body is resilient to train harder and handle more stress, all right? So this process, how I integrated it with block methods and everything is what I'll show you how I did that and what I do today. The block method is vitally important because you're not convoluting the organism. And what I'm going to call this is functional reserve range. So if you have two twin athletes, and one has a resting heart rate of 65, and the other one has and his lactate threshold is 165, he's got a work capacity zone of 100 beats before he hits lactate threshold. You got the other twin that has a resting heart rate of 32, lactate threshold of 172, because he's trained differently. His range is 140 beats per minute. So before he hits his limits, he has a much larger range. So he can do more sets. He can recover faster if you have these qualities in a human, okay? Difference about 40 beats, but 50% effort on the bottom guy will produce you much less results in regards to heartbeats. I mean, your heartbeat will still be lower, much lower. So the idea was trying to control everything in training. So how your body adapts, you have to understand. So I started to realize, look, the only thing I can control is intensity and duration I had to make those work together, because if I'm doing conditioning or lifting, what would happen is you're pulling the body in different directions. I'll get to that in a second. So I use this example. If I'm trying to train for a powerlifting meet over here and a triathlon over here, that doesn't work. You can do it, it's just not going to work. Well, why doesn't it work? The reason it doesn't work is because the body is being pulled in too many different directions. So then my question was, well, how can I put it in the same direction? So instead of doing long miles and runs in your powerlifting workout, I'm going to control everything by training for time. So I switched from repetitions a number of years ago just to time. And that time was taken in basically 3 components. It's either 10 seconds or less, 20 to 40 seconds, or then a continuous hour workout. So you got your aerobic zones, and I'll cover that in a second. But the idea was, unless I can manage that time, and here's the thinking, and this is how I get those results. If you do everything that day, let's say for 10 seconds, you run, you lift, you condition, the whole body will adapt. Every organ, the brain, the blood, the liver, the kidneys, everything adapts at the same level. So then the only thing that has to happen is your body's using its energy to adapt to one concept. Okay? Because here's the deal. Let's say you go out and you do a heavy back squat. Many coaches do this over the course of the country. You know, and you look at where it came from, probably Charlie Francis, high, low, doing tempo runs. But if you do a heavy back squat, it activates mTOR, if anybody understands what that is. It's an enzyme that's for strength. But then you go out and do conditioning and tempo runs, you're activating an aerobic-based enzyme. So you'll get results, you just won't get optimal results. Okay? So what do? You simply, if you're going to squat for 10 seconds that day, you're going to run for 10 seconds. If you're going to squat for 5, we're going to do running for 5 at the end of the workout. But everything's done at the same time. Why? Because you're going to pull the body in 2 different directions. So you can actually train less and get greater results with the theory of a minimum effective dosing. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to get maximum results, but this is the way to do it. The other way I do it is super maximal methods, which I'll talk about. I use super maximal training and the parasympathetic response concept. Look, many people will do, I'll give you an example. I had a 4-year athlete with me. She was tested by our national team. She had 11 tests. She left my organization, went and tested, came back. They said, hey, the national team wants me to do this program. It was more functional training based. Now, I'm not telling you functional training is bad. I'm just giving you the example here. And I think it's good. But in my methods, she was a 130-pound female. She used 365 single-leg safety bar squats. Okay? So she was a stud for me. Now, what transpired, she did functional training for 3 months. And I would follow her on the omega wave, and I can see if she's got a parasympathetic response or a sympathetic response. And the parasympathetic response is a recovery state. So she'd do her workouts, and she never recovered. She never recovered. She kept going and never recovered. Guess what? They had no training effect. So if you don't get a parasympathetic shift into your stress, you're not getting trained. She goes back to test her 11 tests. They all got worse. She had no training response because we train at such a high level with super maximal loads. So a 30-pound kettlebell wasn't doing much to her because she'd have 365 on a single leg safety bar squat. She'd be holding her breath. Her blood pressure would get about 400. See the difference? So these are the methods that I use, and I'll cover them as we go. But common mistakes I want to make sure everybody understands is you can condition, you have to condition right. And I'll show you how to bracket everything to get those results that you saw, okay? You can't mix the qualities. You just can't mix them to get maximum results. Now, you'll get results, but by mixing qualities, and I'm telling you, I'm going to show you how to do it in every form of working out that you can think of. So, the creatine phosphate phase, these are the 3 energy systems. The anaerobic, the lactate, you can call it glycolysis, and then you've got the aerobic. I'd say it's about 120 plus seconds in your aerobic zone. Obviously, you're just continuously moving. The most important one is the alactic anaerobic. Everything's done under 10 seconds, okay? So yes, we'll do RDLs for 10 seconds. We'll do RDLs for 5 seconds. You can get into partial movements. So let's say my throwers have 465 on the bar. You say 5-second RDLs isn't going to be a whole lot, double, triple. But if they're doing oscillatories at the bottom, they can crank out about 8 of them. So we're going to the weakest position and doing 5-second RDLs with 465 for 8 reps. So they're still getting strong. Now, there's 2 qualities up there. There's high quality, and then there's work capacity in this zone. So the biggest thing in sports now is they're finding if the teams are both equal, what team wins? It's the team that can be the fastest at the end of the game. Usually is the one that wins now. It's repeated sprint ability, okay? So to work high quality, to work speed, and get faster, so what's the difference between the two? The only difference is how much you do and really the reps. Or the rest, I'm sorry. So if you want to run a 10-second sprint, 5-second, you need to wait 2.5 minutes to run it fast again. If you want to run it for conditioning, about 45 seconds. Okay? That's your difference. That's it. Quality versus conditioning. Okay? That being said, now, I have listed here 6 to 8 reps for running, but for lifting, it can go 12 to 16 reps before the quality starts to wear off. When I say quality, so in your lift, if you're just lifting today, you're going to go up to 16 sets if you're in shape, and then your 10-second sets are going to be reduced to with 45 seconds rest. Because after the first 16 lifts, you're really wasting your time because you're not going to recover anyway. So you're going to get your conditioning in at that point. So in my lifts, if I'm lifting, the first 12 to 16, we'll have 2 minutes rest. I'll do prehab in between. And then after that, we kick the rest down to 45 seconds. So you're getting your conditioning of your alactic system. Remember, I'm starting to train the ability to reproduce effort. Okay, now running is different because it's so global. So it takes the whole body. So you only have so many qualities. Now, where did I get that rep range? I just timed thousands of athletes, and when they got slower, and that's about it. Maximum effort, okay? So if I go and run on a running day, let's say I'm going to run and lift. So my athletes go 6, they'll run 6. They'll basically run 6 reps of whatever I want. I'll either do agility drills, acceleration drills, or flying 90s where they build up. And that's my 6 running reps with 2.5 minutes in between. Then we go in the weight room. We'll squat, maybe do some RDLs, 4 or 6 sets, or the safety bar single leg squat, which I talked about. Probably 12 sets total there. And then everything starts to kick in and get faster. So it's a 10-second overhead press or whatever you want to do, and the rest is then reduced for the rest of the workout. We may condition, if it's that time of the year, when we go to conditioning, it's a 45-second rest. But you can see how you could push sleds, you could sprint, you could do whatever you want, but everything's max effort at 10 seconds, okay? Now, if there's no rest, it basically becomes an aerobic, all right? So you have to deviate and keep in mind that this is the only difference between capacity and quality, is really the rest. I had one of my athletes, did the high quality work. We ran 20-yard dashes that day. He ended up doing 70 bouts of 5-second work, okay? So I had a group of strength coaches call me. They were getting together. They said, well, what was your conditioning? He ran 22 20s, he ran 22, no, it was 40s because it was a 5-second day. He ran 22 before he dropped off. So he did not drop a tenth. He ran 22 in a row without dropping off. That was number 70. And they go, well, where was the conditioning? I mean, I don't know what else you would want after that. If you did 70 bouts. So it wasn't tempo runs, but it was still maximum effort. Everything was done that day. So the next one, obviously, is lactate. I don't do a whole lot of lactate work. Honestly, I have 32 resting heart rates on 50 of my male athletes 3 years ago when I was tracking this. 32, I had a 6'6" NHLer, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, hungover, had a 29 resting heart rate, sitting in my office. I mean, he's a monster. His heart's so big compared to his body. So there's a reason for that. There's huge adaptations in the heart, but we don't do conditioning. The only difference in lactate, still, if you look at it, is the rest periods. That's it. Okay? I don't spend a lot of time there. I don't even train my hockey players there. Okay? Because they get really good at the alactic. They get really good at the aerobic. My hockey players, I do genetic testing. They're already good at lactate. So why bother training them? So I train everything they're not good at. So the aerobic component, look, everything that's not intense, you keep your heart rate between 110 and 160, is an aerobic-based training day, okay? So think about this. If you did Monday, if you did a workout, heavy 10-second day, you just lighten the loads, keep it a continuous workout, keep your heart rate at 160, and it's not that intense, add more reps, it's an aerobic day. I always default to aerobic days if we're overtrained. My conditioning, bodybuilding, light bodybuilding is an aerobic workout. Weight circuits, okay? One aerobic method I love to use for when I'm building a base, and we can talk a little bit about that. I know a few NFL teams use it. I know I experimented with my throwers. Basically, I take let's say we'll start with 2 exercises. We'll do a bench and a back squat. And they'll hit a 50% single on the back squat. Then they go right over the bench and hit a single. They go back and forth for 8 minutes. Their heart rate gets about 160. So your linemen, your shot putters will do an 8-minute aerobic set. What's the difference if they go and jog for 8 minutes at 160 or lift weights for 8 minutes? It's the same thing. They still can get stronger here, okay? So then we do 4 exercises that day, and we end up getting 32 minutes of aerobic training while they're lifting weights. So as long as your workout is in that aerobic zone, it's an aerobic workout. It can be weightlifting, it can be anything you want. It can be CrossFit, it can be lighter though. Just don't go over the lactate threshold. Now I know what my athletes' lactate threshold are. So my 160 sometimes with some of my kids is 172, 173, but I know exactly what it is. So they just rest a little bit and then they get back into the workout. Now, remember, I mentioned to you, you have to adapt to your training. Like again, you can't do your back squats and then go run. It's not optimal. So the body has to adapt to everything at the same time. So here, how do you do it? You train for time. You set your parameters. You're going as hard as you can, and you set your parameters. 10 seconds, 20 to 40 seconds, or your aerobic light workout. What has to happen is, like I said, I'm not going to revisit this too much, but you can't pull your organism in multiple directions, and down to the cellular level, your body will adapt. You'll get greater adaptations. You'll get greater functions. That's as deep as we have to go today. With the speed stuff and the programming for the advanced physios here, the CNS, the relaxation model, the greatest athletes in the world, they found what separated world champs and Olympic record holders was how fast your muscles could relax. It wasn't VO2 max, it wasn't speed, it wasn't anything. By training speed and explosive, you're going to teach your muscles to relax faster. That's where the best athletes. Literally, it was the biggest differentiation between somebody that won an Olympic gold and somebody that could barely make the national team or struggled to perform there. That was the biggest differentiation between them. So speed is king, training at maximum effort, whether it's speed or heavy weights. I highlighted this. Look, this is more, if you do use this method, there's more strained metabolic and hormonal environments, suppresses the homeostatic response, and has an effect on workload intended to develop athletic abilities, okay? All I'm saying is, I don't have to get into a day. You could write a book on the biochemical adaptations, but what I'm going to tell you is you're going to pigeonhole those things into the qualities that you need. You can look at that. Now, the biggest thing I want you to understand is, I kind of explained to you the parasympathetic response, but I'm going to show you now how you can just structure your workouts. I think I'll give you plenty of examples. So with my athletes, people would say, hey, how can you get, if all you do is alactic, how can you get 32 resting heart rates? It's simple. There's also an aerobic-based component behind it, okay? It's that simple. And I'll give you some of the tricks and methods that I use to get there. But I'm just going to tell you my shifted undulated model. So in a 5-day program, let's say here, let me back up. If you have 6 qualities you identified, let's say speed, strength, and alactic work capacity, short sprints, then the other ones would be your aerobic base, and then strength endurance in lactate. Basically what you have is you can put your whole week into those 6 categories. So let's say I have a thrower here, and all he's going to do, or a hockey player, all we're going to do is train under 10 seconds for the whole week. So the first 2 days, I'll train at 7 seconds. So everything's done at 7 seconds. Agility drills, running, conditioning, if we would condition. The next 2 days are at 5 seconds. And the last end of the week, if you understand TriPhasic training and my undulated model, I'll do 10 seconds at the end of the week to build your conditioning. And that's it, okay? So there's how you can train. Now that's a pretty hard week. You can drop the times lower. You can go 5, 3, and 7. Now this one, I've flat loaded at 10 seconds the whole week. I had baseball players do this, put on 16 pounds of muscle in about 8 weeks. Why? You're getting optimal hormone release. You're not training and mixing qualities. Your testosterone growth hormone shoots through the roof. There's also another reason. Cortisol, we know is bad. If you start to get over 10 seconds, cortisol is actually good in the mornings. You release so you can go hunt for food, so you can get some energy. The problem is when you do over 10-second sets all the time, and I found this out in my hockey players, they'd all come back from the NHL season a little belly here, okay? It's because their cortisols were through the roof because they spend so much time in lactate. So when you do sets 20 seconds all the time and 30 seconds hard, you're producing cortisol. Make more energy. I found I've been able to manage cortisol with sets of under 10 seconds. Okay, so what happens? You do a 30-second set, you do a bunch of those, you release cortisol, so you're trying to get anabolic, but then your body will break down and go catabolic. So you put 2 bricks on, or 3, and you take 1 off. With this, managing cortisol, you put 3 bricks on and you leave them. You put 3 bricks on and you leave them. So by staying under 10 seconds most of the time in a 5-day plan or a 3-day plan, you manage bad hormones. You keep them out of there. I'll show you another way through the correct breathing patterns. Okay? How do you integrate it? So realistically, in a workout, it's pretty simple. Your first 12 to 16 sets, after the warm-up, the first 6 sets, I'll do agility, acceleration, or top-end speed. I just pick which one you want to do that day. So I'll do 6, like I said, with maximal rest. In between, what do? There's some things that we do. We do some things called neural perplexity. We may do some rehab training. We may do some form running drills. But those 6 drills are done max effort. It can be pulling a sled. It can be done through agility drills, okay? Then we'll come into the weight room, and we'll do 8 to 10 lifting sets, like I said, RDLs and back squats. Maybe we do 5 of 5. And then what transpires is that the next 13 to 70 sets are done with reduced rest. Pretty simple. Because you're maintaining quality. Now, I wrote an article called Speed and Skill Optimization, where it utilizes that first period of practice for coaches. I've had youth coaches to pro teams redirect their practices. So the first opportunity in practice, you do 1 drill, you sprint, then you do some stick handling, and you do some basketball dribbling, whatever, but you're resting while you're practicing the skill, whether it's shooting. Then you come back and you run another maximum speed drill. You just do that 6 times. So if you can give up in practice, if you can give up 8 minutes to do that, you'll get faster throughout the drill, or throughout the year. And that article, Speed and Skill Optimization, if you want to Google it, you can find it. Now, you can do this with CrossFit. It's fairly simple. So if you want to do an alactic day, do all your sets under 10 seconds. Pick the right lifts. And then after about the first 12 to 16 sets, then you start reducing your time to work that system, okay? Now, those results are what transpires when I see my athletes go through there, and I'll give you the other ins and outs. Understand, if I can get a 250-pound guy down in the 40s resting heart rate, he can train 6 days a week, twice a day. Okay? He can train 6 days a week, twice a day. So if you want to do, and look, 5 days a week training, if you want to do everything, let's say you want to be good at everything. This came out of my tactical manual for operations, or special operations, but here's a 3-day model. First day you walk in, day 1, you're going to do speed and agility, speed and strength, conditioning under 10 seconds. These qualities, those are the 6 qualities I talked about. Day 1 is your under 10-second day. Then you're going to work, if you want to be good at lactate, then you're going to work on Wednesday, you're going to work lactate. There's your 30 strength endurance. But your conditioning is 20 to 40 seconds also. And then the next day is the aerobic day. You're just going to lift and never stop moving and keep your heart rate at 120, 110 to 160. Okay? So with that being said, that's how you can plug it in a 3-day plan if you want to be good at everything. Okay? It's pretty simple. This concept, and you'll get results. Now, actually, I personally feel if you switch the first 2 days, this is better. We found that operators this way seem to handle the loads better. Operators are the most stressed humans, like compared to my athletes. I've monitored them. Look, my athletes go play golf after this workout, right? Other people have to go to work. For an athlete, I would say the alactic day or the lactate day at the beginning is more optimal. Why? It produces some more growth hormone release to set you up for a very good Wednesday. Okay? Now everyone asks me, why do I put aerobic at the end of the week? Well, when I'm tired and I'm fatigued, if I'm going to mix these together, that's when you want to do aerobic, when you're fatigued, not when you're fresh. Okay? Plus, it'll help you recover for the next week. So that's a 3-day schedule. It's called the weekly sequencing model. Okay? Let me talk you through something really simple. Here's how you can apply it. Let's say you only have one exercise. You got one thing. We'll pick a bike. Okay, so I'm going to do strength endurance. How am I going to do that? I'm going to ride 40 seconds of that bike with maximal resistance. I'm going to take 2.5-minute rest. And then when I get 8 of those in, I'm going to kick to my lactate conditioning, so I'm going to go 45 seconds rest with maximal effort. Okay, or 45 seconds with a 40-second set. I'm going to do 20 of those. So that's one day with a bike. The next day, can you do agility? You could run without the bike, but you're going to do 10 qualities or 10 sets of the bike with 2 minutes rest, maximum effort. And then you're going to turn around and reduce the rest so you can get 40 to 60 sets in of a bike on Wednesday. And then the bike on Friday would be continuous bike with your heart rate at 140. This is how you would train with all 6 qualities if you wanted them. Not that I want them. But that's just an example. If you start training with time, you can get those adaptations in your energy system. Here's what you can't do. You can do. This is compatible, so you can go speed and lactate in the same workout. It's not optimal, but it's compatible. They're not pulling each other apart. So you can do your power lifts and you can condition lactate. What you can't do is you can't do the aerobic after alactic or the lactate. You can't do that to get optimal results for your athletes. All right? If you must do them all in the same day, do aerobic in the morning. You got to wait 2 hours because the enzyme that's activated during aerobic is active for 2 hours. You'll burn fat and you'll get more aerobic effects that way. You wait 2 hours, then you can work the other qualities if you want to. So if you have to do it, and I made this talk for multiple types of people that train, do your aerobic in the morning, the other workouts later. I would say a minimum of 2 hours. Okay? A minimum 2 hours. Now, if you do this, you can always do this. I've found more results this way when my athletes have had to do this. If we do aerobic training, we'll do it in the morning. They do a fasted morning workout. So they'll try to do a low-carb dinner the night before, and people say, well, they still have glycogen in their muscles. I get it, but no physiologist can tell me why my athletes just run out of gas. Okay, so I know there's glycogen in there, but they're not using it. Okay? And what we'll do is we use various supplements in that aerobic workout to build mitochondria. So whether it's green coffee bean extract, whatever it may be. Now, during that aerobic workout, we'll also hold our breath. So when you hold your breath, you have to blow all your air out. So I have oxygen sensors. That analyzes the saturation levels. So when we're building our base, in our base phase, or we're doing an aerobic workout, we'll breathe out and keep exercising for about 10 to 20 seconds. Your oxygen levels will drop to 80, maybe even 70s ranges. People say, well, is that effective? Well, when I breathe in, their oxygen levels don't drop. If I hold the breath with the breath in, their oxygen levels stay high. So if you want some altitude training, and when I say that, I didn't tell my trainers this, but my kids were getting signs of altitude sickness when we would do that method, okay? I didn't tell my trainers that. It's not good. Anyway, well, it's okay. They'll be fine. So we'll also do the aerobic workout with our mouth taped shut. There's a great book out there I've integrated in my training. It's called Oxygen Advantage. It literally teaches you, called vasodilation, okay? My administration walked through, had the whole women's hockey team doing a circuit with their mouth taped shut. They just kept walking, thank God, right? So that teaches you to breathe through your nasal passages. They'll actually get bigger, they'll get more effective. Their blood vessels will open up, okay? With everything I just showed you, I mean, I have kids, blood pressure's 80/60. Resting heart rate's at 32. You put that in there and add the Oxygen Advantage, that book in there, it'll be placed into my GPP book when it comes out. We'll also do amino acids in the morning. I think a lighter loads of a little bit of fat too will help kick in the fat burning process. But I also feel and know that a little bit of fat in the morning right away, 15 minutes within getting up, and amino acids help stabilize your insulin levels. So then you don't store fat as much. So whether it's a teaspoon of coconut oil in your coffee or olive oil, whatever it may be. So we actually have them do that. And then we'll take a post-workout shake 2 hours later so that they can recover for their quality workout later in the day. Now, one of the mistakes that people do is in my opinion, I've seen it on heart rate variability. I had an athlete chug a shake, checks heart rate variability, goes through the roof. If they sip it, swish it around their mouth to get the enzymes and then swallow it, that shake's much more digestible. It's much more palatable for their gut to absorb, okay? So you're not getting, and the digestion problems will be reduced. So sip your shake, wash it around your mouth, and then swallow it, okay? Don't chug it down, all right? You can also add digestive enzymes. NCAA athletes don't have that ability. So here's where I lose 20 beats per minute off their heart rate. So we get through my base phase, which is 3 weeks. Then I go to, literally, this is the best lift, the most transferable lift I've ever seen in my life for all of sports. It's a safety bar, single leg squat, okay? And essentially all I do, now look, this is super maximal loading. So if you want to take and figure your athlete's max for single leg safety bar squat, just use 90% of their back squat max. So if it's 300, their single leg safety bar max is 200, okay? Or 270, I'm sorry, 270. And then you take 120% of that, and you can go about 305, whatever, 310. So my athletes will go do 2 weeks worth of eccentric training. They're doing a single leg safety bar squat. So we got safety bar, and we go down. Now, when we do this, we'll start about here, and we'll go down eccentrically, nice and slow for a 10 count. They're holding their breath. They're holding their breath in, so they stabilize their spine, not holding their breath when they blow out. They're going down nice and slow. The blood pressure is getting about 400, maybe 5 in some of them. What are the adaptations to that? The blood vessels are expanding. This is why we have such low blood pressure with my athletes and low resting heart rates, because when the heart beats, the tubes that they're running through the vessels are so pliable that it sends blood. And if you can get more blood to your muscles, you can exchange more substrates. I think the three main ways to increase endurance is increase the size of the heart and the power of the heart, increase the local work capacity, and then through this, increase the way it carries it. And you have your 3 ways, okay? Now, and then I take a week off, and then week 7 and 8, we'll do isometric. So, look, I mean, you're going down, and this is the worst week. You're going down and holding that for 10 seconds with your breath, holding your breath. The only rule is you can't pass out in my gym, okay? It's tough, it's brutal, it's scary in regards to, but when I say adaptations are scary. Now look, when I say it's sports specific, I get some pretty amazing results. But I had a group of throwers, they're pretty strong. They're raw squatters, 500 to 600 pounds. We stopped squatting for 8 weeks, did this lift, and they put 60 pounds on their squat. We didn't squat. So that's pretty good. So if you can come back and squat 300 kilos, you haven't squatted in 8 weeks, and that's 60 pounds heavier than what you did before, that's a pretty good adaptation. Now, remember, the super maximal, when we do that, we get in a very good, I would call it normal position, and when I say that, I would say we hold on, and people say, well, why are you holding on? I'm like, one of my throwers 3 weeks ago did 800 pounds, single leg safety bar squat. Okay, so that's why we hold on. We're not working balance with 800 pounds. So we're in this position here. But when I do sport-specific power, I'll put bands on the bar, and we are in this position here. If you look at the talk last year, when we squat with our knees over our toes in the sport-specific position here, because everything for your hips and knees are vertical. You need to listen to my talk last year to understand that, okay? But everything's vertical. This, eccentric and iso, is a tissue remodeling. I'm remodeling tissue. That's what happens in TriPhasic. The actin-myosin heads are pulled apart. You make the tissue stronger, more resilient to injury. Then when I get into sport-specific stuff, I push that knee forward, and I go straight up and down in the bar, okay? You can have to look at my talk from last year if you want. Now, that's how I progress them. So I do a tissue remodeling, the first phase of eccentric isos, and then we go straight up and down to make it more sport-specific. Now, might be running a little behind. So I'm going to take some advanced research Dr. Keith Barr out of UC Davis. Gave a great podcast. You can look it up. Here's what you got. The reason TriPhasic works so well, that works so well, is because the muscle and tendon is really a two-spring system if you look at it. You got the muscle here and the tendon here. When it works together, if this is a spring and this is a spring, if this spring becomes super strong, when they work together, it beats this spring up, okay? So when you're training, I want you to understand, let's say, for example, powerlifter. He's doing a lot of muscle training, but not much tendon training. Tendon training is be done with plyometrics, the power phase if you're in a power, okay? But when you're doing heavy loads, you're training muscle, all right? This spring becomes really strong, and this spring down here is getting beat up. What do powerlifters hurt? Fascia, tendons, quad tendons, bicep tendons. The muscle's so strong that the other spring can't handle it. Okay? The other way you get athletes that go train for the combine, and all they do is speed work because they're getting ready. They're training this spring. Okay? They're training the tendon. What happens? They're not training the muscle. They go to football camp. What do? They pull hamstrings. This is why training is a process. So in TriPhasic, let's say you're training eccentric 90%. You're training probably 90% muscle, 10% tendon. You go to the isometric phase, it's probably about 80% of the muscle and 20% tendon. Let's say you switch to a power phase, it's probably 50-50 muscle and tendon. And then you go to a speed phase where you're running more, you're jumping, you're training mostly tendon, okay? Now, this is why you can't just do one loading model. You have to train. Training's a process. Now, here's the catch. Dr. Keith Barr came up. They found that if you take 50 milligrams of vitamin C and gelatin, like beef gelatin or tendon cartilage, 15 grams before a workout, or 1 hour before a workout, vitamin C and beef tendon, or jello, that gets into your system, and the tendon is like a sponge. So when it's not loaded, it's got water running through it, fluids. And then when it's loaded, it pulls. All those fluids run out, it'll run into the rest of your body, mix in with the vitamin C and the gelatin, and it goes back in. And it keeps mixing as it's, whether you're running, jumping rope, whatever it may be. They found then that that tendon can be recovered in 6 hours. Okay? So then, in theory, you could almost do that twice a day, okay, to make your tendons strong. And your number one reason for training is really in sports is injury prevention. I know you might have a sport where you need to get strong, but that's it, okay? This is why the process. Now, if you're a power lifter, you need to get strong, but I'm not saying you got to go out and do plyos. I'm saying you got to get into the power phase maybe in your off season at 50% loads when you're using bands and the explosive stuff to train your tendons more, so you can support that tissue. If you're a speed guy, you need to hit heavy weights so you can train the muscles to handle those loads, because that's the only way that tissue adapts. What I want to talk about is, a lot of people ask me about RPR. I made sure I save enough time for this. RPR is basically a neurological-based system that will cause reflexes in the body to turn on. Perfect. You want to lay down for me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, right here, right here. So what I have here, I'm going to give a breathing reset right in front of you, okay? Sometimes it's not very pleasurable, okay? She's willing to work with me. I had an Olympian do this. She performed the same bike workout for 3 years at a heartbeat of 160. We did the breathing. The very next bike workout was at 140 for 6 months. So same bike, same loads, same everything. She's 20% more efficient, okay? By what we're going to do now. I had an Army Ranger. He slept basically in 2-hour intervals throughout the night. I shifted him into a parasympathetic state from the breathing alone. He slept 13 hours his first night, okay? Then my best athletes can shift from a sympathetic state, be in the squat rack. So my Olympic caliber wrestlers would go to the squat rack, get into there, 180 beats, 45 seconds later, they're at 65 because they have the right breathing pattern. I'm going to reset her breathing pattern because her tissues are basically tight, okay? This is a pre-test. Those top two heart rate zones right there, red's the highest, the next one's the green. The athlete, I think, spent roughly about 83% of his time in the top two zones on a test that he failed. There's the same test done 6 days later with the right breathing patterns. He only spent 30% of the time in the top two heart rate zones in a 3-day period, or a 6-day period. That's the same athlete, but you can see that they're different, okay? And there's what transpires. Now, with the RPR, what I'll do often is I'll check the hip flexor before I do the breathing. Okay, so I'm going to test the hip flexor. I'm going to test her strength. Ready? Hold. Okay, she's not very good right now. Ready? Hold. Take one finger. I'm going to push her hip flexor down. I externally rotated, so I didn't let the quad in there. This is isolating the hip flexor, okay? I would say she's about a 1. What we're going to do, I could check the other side. Ready? Relax. Okay, relax. You let me have it. All right there, the tissue starts to grab, okay? So I'm going to treat her breathing. When I do that, I'll explain it as I go. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that spot. I'm going to split her chest, okay? So she's going to keep breathing. She's going to take my thumb. I'm going to kind of torture her a little bit on that breathing. I'm going to split the chest. What happens here? You'll find that the shoulders aren't as far forward, and I'm just basically rubbing straight up and down, back and forth, right on her chest. Now, she already kind of knows this. She's going to work on her breathing. Her breathing, she's pure belly breathing. She's going to hit a belly breath, and she's going to push it way deep into her pelvis. Okay? She struggles with this. I find a lot of dancers and yoga instructors, females in our society, why? Because they walk around with their stomachs in. She's breathing through her nose, out her mouth, or through her nose if she wants. Now I'm going to split right down her chest. With females, I'll often go down to where the sports bra stops me, and then I'll go back up through the other side. So now, people are often tight, rounded shoulders. You can do all this scap work, folks. If your shoulders are rounded forward, it's not going to turn the scaps on because this tissue's tight. It's Sheraton's law. You understand? If this tissue's flexing, the scaps aren't going to ever be strong like they can. If you can release this tissue, which I'm doing right now, your scaps will turn on. Okay? So why is breathing important? Probably 800 and 0 on this. It might not work today. But I tested the hip flexor. I'm working on her breathing. How is that? The reason is, a friend of mine went to a non-involved cadaver lab, tried to dissect the psoas out of the diaphragm, the body, couldn't do it. The fascia is tied together. Your breathing is tied to your psoas. Okay? If your breathing pattern's wrong, I've never checked a psoas that wasn't weak. Okay? What happens with hip flexion if your psoas is weak? Something's got to do it. So if your psoas can't do hip flexion, if you can't find hip flexion, you're going to die because you can't hunt for food. Your body has 2 objectives: breathe and eat, breathe and move. Okay? So then what transpires is, as I tried to, let's just go through here. So then, tendency is, if your psoas isn't working, and hers was a 1 out of 10, you get big quads. She's got big quads. Why? Because your quads now do hip flexion and knee extension. So my athletes that had big quads, track athletes, I would turn the psoas on, the quads would get smaller, but guess what happened? They ran faster and jumped higher. okay? Now, this is a parasympathetic response. I'm helping her breathing. I'm loosening up her breathing pattern so that she can get deeper breaths here, okay? So on this side, I'm just on the edge of the ribs at a 45 coming in. I stay off the xiphoid process, and there's grit in there. There's adhesions. As I'm rubbing my thumb over them, they'll start to disappear with her breathing. They get better over time. Very good. She's trying to find the right breath. She's getting there. I'd normally jump across the table, but I'll stay here. Now, if your psoas is short and tight, but it's weak because it's always stressed because your breathing pattern's off, what's the antagonist? The glutes. The glutes are now downregulated. So, I've been able to actually fix the breathing, which then turns the psoas on, relaxes it, makes it strong, then the glutes automatically turn on. So the glute problem that everybody tries to fix can be your breathing pattern. Okay? You all right? Good. Now maybe nothing will happen. We'll see. We'll see what she tells us to, if we need it. Now, haven't worked on the psoas. Take a couple nice big breaths. Okay. So if you were up here, you could see that her ribs are expanding now because this tissue was all tight. So if I take her t-shirt and I just tighten it up a little bit, you see those bands? Those were the bands that I was fixing, but they were her fascia. Same thing. So if it goes like this, you can see these bands. That's the fascia lines that I'm also, so that she gets a bigger expansion. Now, didn't work on her psoas. We'll see. Ready? Hold. So I just push. I would rank her about an 8 or a 9. So she went from one finger, to now she's probably, I'm going to guess, about 80 pounds of force. So I could push her down with one finger before. Now she's about 80 pounds of force. Okay? I just turned the psoas on because I got her breathing pattern correct. It's that simple. Okay? Keep breathing. Okay, we're just above 90, where I felt the tissue. So there's about 20 degrees. Okay, I didn't really work on her. Psoas. Let me find her psoas. All right, you ready for this? Okay. So I don't hit the psoas. I just hit the spot for the psoas. It's about 2 inches over, 2 inches down. I'll go in. Some people you can push on and just hold it. I'm going to go in to make sure I really get a good response. Breathe in. So breathe through it. Yeah, it's not very comfy, but I guess a little bit. Ready? Hold. She's rock solid for me. Okay? So now I know her psoas is working and her quads are going to get smaller for a while. How long does it last? Some of my athletes, it's last 6 months. If they're really messed up, it might last 4 hours, but it'll get them through that workout. Okay? When we teach it, we teach the kids to actually do it to themselves. So then, for example, the way I see it, I'm going to get you the psoas. I will watch my athletes, and then I will see what's wrong with them, and I'll pull them over and just do this real quick. So, for example, if they're running and they're running at me and the knee comes out when they run and they accelerate through, I know that the quad's working too much and the psoas isn't, so I'll work on that psoas, okay? If they shift laterally, if she shifts in her squats, I'll hit her lateral sling, and then she stops shifting her weights. Let me see where your lateral sling is. I think it's off. Ready? Hold. Yeah, it breaks right there. Ready? Okay. She's not really good. I would call her a ready? Hold. She's struggling. Okay, let me aside real quick. So if your athletes run with one foot in front of the other, they should run. When you run, your foot should be just below the hip. If it's in like this, whether you're a female athlete on a treadmill, whether you're a lineman, somebody with long legs, your lateral sling isn't strong enough to support your hips. So you'll run like this versus this. This is your foot underneath you, okay? She would run that way right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on the inside of her hip bone. I'm just going to dig in just on the inside of the PSIS. Nice little circle here. So again, if you squatted down and you shifted, I would hit this area right here. Actually, in the weight room, I'll just pound on it, and it usually turns it on. I want to make sure hers get on, and it's going to be brutal. Okay? Just right across the hip bone. It's not really. And then I'll check just one side. Make sure we got it on. I'm going from the ASIS to PSIS. Trying to find a good spot, in a happy place. All right, lay on your back. Let me see, I'll fix her other one. Ready? Hold. Okay, she's rock solid. So now her foot would run straight below her hips, okay? So let's flip over real quick. You good? Ready? Lift your leg up. Hold. She's got nothing in her glutes. So when you test the glute, ready, go. Up, ready. SI pump, you got nothing. Okay, flip over. This will be my last one. I basically rub the back of the head, try not to pull the hair. I'll rub it. So the way she walked, are you a QL driver or hamstring? So her hamstring, when she did glute extension, when she tries hip extension, she pulls from her lower back. There's two other scenarios. You pull from your lower back or your hamstring and say your glute. What transpires now is that she starts hip extension and her lower back locks up. So most likely, eventually, we'll have a disc problem. You got a disc problem? Yeah, she does have a disc problem. A couple surgeries already, okay? Well, I knew that when she walked in, so I already knew that. So when I try to turn these glutes back on, so look, if her QL is firing for her glutes to start the movement, and she does all these prehab exercises, what is she doing? She's training the QL to fire. When she does glute exercises, her glutes may feel worked, but they're just tired. If your glute pattern's not firing the glute first, you're just ingraining the wrong exercises. Now, when she walks, she starts, I'm gonna hit the glutes hard. Okay. When she walks, she does 10,000 steps in a day. She starts it with her QL. But if you get her glutes to fire in the weight room, let's say you did, for 60 reps, and then she walks 10,000 the wrong way, do you think it really matters? It doesn't. So you have to teach your athletes to walk correctly. Breathe. Okay, ready? Breathe. Flip over, see what happens. All right, ready? Up. Hold. I like it. Ready? Up. A little higher. Do you see how high it is? Hold. Okay, there we go. So what I do is I hit right behind the jaw. Right underneath the jaw. You can flip back over. There was a psoas, and the neck was occipital bone, and I did right behind the jaw. Okay? So again, this is RPR if you're interested, reflexiveperformance.com. The breathing turns the psoas on, which will loosen up the back, change posture, change gait, which then turns on the glutes. Pretty simple. You have to change the tissue. Look, you don't have to be a soft tissue expert to do this. These are just resets of the neurological system. I've had people that have no physiology take these courses. A hairdresser has become very proficient in charging $100, $150 a session. Had no physiology background, okay? Again, it's RPR. I know a lot of people ask me to talk about it, so there it is.